but I would make it with fusilli because it soaks up the sauce better. But there's something about getting the oils and the fats into the sauce, and then the fusilli just grabs it and soaks it all up. Definitely have to have like green peppers and some spicy peppers, bright colored rainbow dyed. That's a dish that I always really like to make.
Welcome back to Flavor Report. My name's Joe Winger. Today's conversation is with actor George Gallagher. You've seen him on TV shows, indie films. Now he's on BET Plus, Tyler Perry's show, Perimeter. George, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Our audience is very food-based. Food, wine, cocktails. Do you identify as a foodie? I guess that's a yes, maybe. What's your favorite food dish?
My pronouns are asparagus, broccoli, and spinach. I'll tell you a really funny aside about food. So the first time I went to California, I had this manager who had a client on a hit television sitcom on a series, and she was making like really good money, and so were her clients. And so a friend of hers, when you make a lot of money, I guess the natural thing is you have to do something that's eccentric. So her friend went to a psychic nutritionist in Santa Monica or somewhere, and so she recommended this person, and it was like $400 an hour, some obscene amount of money. And she said that she went into the meeting and she said, "Okay, let me see your hand." She looked down, she was breathed. She closed her eyes and she said, "I see broccoli, no asparagus." And then she just sat there and like didn't talk for about 10 minutes or something and just stared at her. And she was like, "Okay." And then it was like, "That'll be $400. Thank you." And I was like, but on a serious note, I love food. I'm big into real food, raw foods, organically grown, supporting local farmers, salads, greens, anything that like actually comes from the planet Earth, and where I don't feel like if we were to take an indigenous person and bring them into my house, they would starve to death because they're looking around confused about what to eat. So that's kind of my barometer. I try to do that. No, I'm kidding. It's a friend of mine said that recently, who spent 7 years in the mountains up in Brazil, or 7 months, not 7 years. He spent 7 months, he got stuck up there in their season. And so he lived with these indigenous people and learned everything about real food. And he said, if you were to take one of these people, like if you went there, you'd starve because you don't know what's poisonous and what's not. But if you took them and put them in Kroger's or Ralph's, they're going to look at these plastic things and they're just going to die. So I think they have like a pretty good finger on the pulse of like what humans are meant to eat. So right. I like to look at real food, I like cooking it, not always raw. I think that was part. Did I answer your question?
Is there a favorite dish that you love to cook, you love to eat, maybe on a big night out, a date night, or a guilty pleasure?
So there was a dish that I used to make. It's not a vegetarian dish, but it did have veggies in it. It was, I actually stole this from a restaurant. It was sausage and pepper penne, but I would make it with fusilli because it soaks up the sauce better. And I would cook the sausages, and I use turkey sausages because I don't really eat pork. I like it a little healthier, but there's something about getting the oils and the fats into the sauce, and then the fusilli just grabs it and soaks it all up. And then I would add almonds into that dish and maybe some greens. So I'll have the peppers, definitely have to have like green peppers and some spicy peppers, bright colored rainbow dyed sort of stuff. And then I'll add in some greens too, like maybe some spinach or something like that. That's a dish that I always really like to make. Sometimes I screw up the fusilli though, if I cook it too much, and then it's a mess, but I've gotten better at it over the years, so it's edible.
George Gallagher, working on Tyler Perry's new BET Plus show, Perimeter. George, thank you so much for your time today. So now, whether it's a website or it's a social media, what's the best way to stay in touch with you? What's the best way to find out what you're working on next?
Absolutely. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's George Gallagher, the number 7. George Gallagher 7 on Instagram, Facebook, George Gallagher. You'll see my face, my picture. And feel free to follow me, keep in touch. Thanks so much.